My daughter forgot to hang up the phone. That one simple mistake was the beginning of the end for the life she thought she had secured. She thought I was just a sad old man, a piece of furniture in the house I built, a living relic to be managed. She and her husband had it all planned out. They would take me on a little trip, a one-way vacation to a place with soft walls and softer food. And while I was gone, they would sell my life's work for a down payment on their own brighter future. I sold the house for $890,000 cash. They found out when their key no longer fit the lock. The silence in the house was a physical thing. It had weight. Ever since Martha passed, it had seeped into the floorboards, settled on the furniture like a fine layer of dust, and filled the spaces where her laughter used to be. I would sit in the armchair she'd picked out, the one with the faded floral pattern, and run my hand over the worn fabric, trying to recall the warmth of her presence. Sometimes, if I closed my eyes, I could almost smell her lemon verbena perfume. But it was always just a ghost of a scent, a memory teasing the edges of my senses before vanishing back into the quiet. The phone rang, a jarring intrusion into the afternoon stillness. It was Sarah, my daughter. Her voice, usually a welcome sound, was syrupy sweet, a little too bright. "Hi, Dad. Just checking in. How are you doing?" I gave her the usual report. The leaky faucet in the guest bathroom was fixed. The hydrangeas were blooming. The quiet was, as always, quiet. I didn't tell her about the ache in my chest that never seemed to go away, or the way I sometimes found myself standing in the middle of a room, unsure of why I'd walked in there. She didn't need to hear that. She had her own life, her own family, her own husband, Mark, to worry about. "That's great, Dad," she said, her voice strained with an artificial cheerfulness. "Listen, Mark and I were talking. We have a little surprise for you. A trip, all expenses paid. A beautiful place by the coast, very relaxing. We think you deserve a break." I felt a flicker of warmth. A trip. It had been years since I'd gone anywhere. That's very thoughtful of you, sweetheart. Of course, Daddy. We love you. I have to run. Mark's just pulling in. I'll call you tomorrow with the details. Love you, bye. A click, but not the final, definitive click of a disconnected line. It was the soft click of a phone being set down on a countertop. She hadn't hung up. I was about to place the receiver back in its cradle when I heard Mark's voice, muffled but clear. "Did you tell him?" "I told him about the trip," Sarah replied. Her voice had lost all its manufactured sweetness. It was flat, businesslike. I laid the groundwork. He bought it hook, line, and sinker. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I held the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. "Good," Mark said. His voice was laced with an impatient sort of greed. "The sooner we get him into that facility, the better. The agent said the market is hot right now. We could get this place listed by the end of the month. Did you see the comps? We're talking close to $1 million, Sarah. $1 million. We could finally pay off my student loans, your credit cards, and have enough for a down payment on that place in the city facility." The word landed like a punch. Not vacation. A home. They were putting me in a home. I know, Sarah sighed. It was a tired, put-upon sound. "It just feels wrong. He built this house. He's a burden, Sarah." Mark's voice was sharp as broken glass. "He can't manage on his own. We're doing him a favor. He'll be safe, and we'll be financially secure. It's a win-win. Stop being so sentimental. It's just a house. He's had his life. Now it's our turn." The line went dead. The final click echoed in the crushing silence. I stood there, receiver in hand, the plastic slick with sweat. The world had tilted on its axis. The floor felt unsteady beneath my feet. I looked around the living room, at the fireplace I had built stone by stone, at the mantelpiece I had carved from a single piece of oak. Every nail, every board, every wire in this house had been touched by my hands. It wasn't just a house. It was a testament. It was Martha's sanctuary. It was my life, and I was a burden. I slowly placed the phone back on its cradle. My hands were trembling, not with age, but with a sudden, glacial rage. The shock was a physical blow, a wave of ice water that left me breathless. I sank into Martha's armchair, the familiar floral pattern suddenly feeling alien against my skin. The room, my home of 40 years, seemed to warp and distort around me. The photographs on the mantelpiece, Sarah's graduation, her wedding, the birth of her children, mocked me. Each smiling face was a mask hiding a cold, calculative heart. My gaze fell on a framed photo of Martha and me, taken on the day we bought this plot of land. We were young, covered in dirt, grinning like fools. The frame was a simple, sturdy walnut, one I had made myself. Now, it felt like a funeral wreath on the grave of my family. The love I had poured into my daughter, the life I had built for her, for us, had been rendered worthless by a single, careless conversation. Burden. The word echoed, a vicious whisper in the silent house. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked from room to room, a ghost in my own home, touching the walls, the door frames, the windowsills. Each object was imbued with a memory, and each memory was now tainted. The height chart penciled on the kitchen doorframe, marking Sarah's growth from a toddler to a teenager, felt like a record of a stranger's life. The faint scratch on the hardwood floor by the back door was from the Christmas she got her first bicycle and tried to ride it inside. I had laughed then. Now, the memory brought a bitter taste to my mouth. I found myself in my office, a small, cluttered room filled with blueprints, tools, and decades of paperwork. My fingers, guided by a grim purpose, found the old metal filing cabinet in the corner. It groaned in protest as I pulled open the bottom drawer, a place I hadn't looked in years. Inside were folders, neatly labeled in Martha's elegant cursive. Education, wedding, automobile, down payment. I pulled out the education folder first. Inside were the canceled checks and bank statements. For years of tuition to a private university. I remember the overtime I'd worked, the weekend jobs I had taken on. I'd come home exhausted, my body aching, but I'd done it without a second thought because my daughter had a dream of becoming a graphic designer. I remember Martha sitting at this very desk, balancing the checkbook, a worried line between her brows. "Are you sure we can afford this, honey?" she had asked. "We'll make it work," I had told her. "It's for Sarah." I looked at the final tuition payment receipt, the paper thin and yellowed with age. Over $40,000 a year. A fortune then, a fortune now. Next, the wedding folder. The invoice from the caterer alone made my breath catch. The bill for the venue, a historic garden estate she'd fallen in love with. The dress, the flowers, the photographer. Mark's parents had contributed a token amount, but the bulk of it, the crushing weight of it, had fallen on us. I remembered standing with Sarah just before she walked down the aisle. She had looked like a princess. "Thank you for everything, Daddy," she had whispered, her eyes shining. "You've given me a perfect day." I had paid for that perfect day with a second mortgage on this house. The house they now saw as nothing more than a cash machine. I sifted through the other files, each piece of paper a fresh stab of betrayal. The $5,000 I'd loaned Mark to buy an engagement ring for my daughter, a loan he'd forgotten to repay. The paperwork for the car I had co-signed for them when their credit wasn't good enough. The $10,000 I'd given them as a gift to help with the down payment on their first apartment, money that came directly from my retirement savings. Each document was a monument to my sacrifice, a testament to a father's love. And their plan was my reward. To discard me like a piece of old machinery, to sell my history, my sanctuary, my very identity, to pay off their debts and climb another rung on their social ladder. The grief that had been my constant companion since Martha's death began to curdle. It twisted and hardened inside me, transmuting from a soft, aching sadness into something cold, sharp, and unyielding. The pain was still there, but it was no longer a debilitating fog. It was a lens, focusing my thoughts with crystalline clarity. The trembling in my hand stopped. The confusion vanished. I remembered a conversation with Martha years ago, after Mark had made some slick, offhand comment about my old-fashioned way of doing business. She had watched him leave, her expression unreadable. Later that night, she turned to me in the dark. "Be careful with that one, my love," she had said softly. "He sees people as tools, and he's teaching our Sarah to do the same." I had dismissed it at the time, chalking it up to a mother's protective instinct. How right she had been. Her words, a ghostly warning from the past, now felt like a posthumous permission, a blessing for what I knew I had to do. They thought I was a burden, a sentimental old fool lost in his memories. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken kindness for weakness, grief for incompetence. I was an engineer. I had spent my life building things, solving complex problems, understanding systems from the inside out. And my family, it turned out, was just another system, a broken one, and I knew exactly how to dismantle it. The next morning, I did not wait for Sarah's call. I acted. The first number I dialed was not for a travel agent or a moving company. It was for a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but the one Martha had insisted we consult years ago when we updated our wills. Mr. Thompson. She had liked him, said he was sharp and didn't waste time with pleasantries. He was exactly what I needed. His secretary put me through immediately. Mr. Thompson, I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil of the past 12 hours. My name is Arthur Pendleton. My late wife, Martha, and I consulted with you some years back. I remember, Mr. Pendleton, he replied, his voice a dry rustle of paper. A sharp woman, your wife. My condolences on her passing. What can I do for you? I laid it out for him, clinically and without emotion. The house was in my name, and my name alone. Martha and I had made sure of that after her diagnosis, a final piece of planning to make things simple. I wanted to sell it. Quickly. I needed to understand my rights, any potential obstacles my daughter and her husband might try to create. Are their names on the deed in any capacity? He asked. No, I said. Have you signed any legal document granting them power of attorney or any claim to the property? Absolutely not. There was a brief pause. Then, Mr. Pendleton, there are no obstacles. It is your house, your asset. You can sell it, burn it down, or paint it purple. Your daughter and her husband have precisely zero legal claim to it. Their opinion is, from a legal standpoint, irrelevant. The words were like a steel beam being bolted into place, reinforcing my resolve. Irrelevant. It was a beautiful word. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. That's all I needed to know. Just as I hung up, my phone rang again. It was Sarah. The caller ID flashed on the small screen, and for a moment, a wave of the old, familiar love washed over me, a painful phantom limb. I let it pass, took a deep breath, and answered, schooling my voice into a tone of gentle, slightly confused curiosity. Hi, Dad, she chirped, the false brightness grating on my ears. Did you think about our little surprise? I have, sweetheart, I said, playing my part. It sounds wonderful. A trip to the coast would be lovely, great. She sounded relieved, eager to seal the deal. I found the most perfect place. It's a wonderful community, very peaceful, with excellent facilities. They handle everything, meals, housekeeping, activities. It's called Seaside Meadows. I can send you the brochure, Seaside Meadows. It sounded less like a resort and more like a final pasture. I nearly laughed. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. That sounds very thorough, I said carefully. When were you thinking? Well, the thing is a spot just opened up. We'd have to act fast. We could drive you down in 2 weeks. Give you time to pack a few things for your extended stay, an extended stay. The euphemisms were almost insulting in their clumsiness. 2 weeks, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. That is fast. But you know, it's funny you should call. I was just thinking about making some changes myself. I have a little surprise of my own in the works. I heard a sharp intake of breath on her end. A surprise? What kind of surprise? Her voice was suddenly sharp, stripped of its counterfeit warmth. Oh, you'll see, I said, allowing a hint of mystery into my tone. I wouldn't want to ruin it. Just know that I think you and Mark are going to be very, very surprised. Now, you let me know the final details of that trip. I'll be ready. I hung up before she could ask another question, a grim smile touching my lips for the first time in months. The game was afoot. My next call was to a name I'd found after an hour of focused research online, a real estate agent named Carol Albright. Her website was plastered with awards, top seller, Diamond Club, President's Circle. Her specialty, according to her bio, was fast, efficient sales for discerning clients, with a focus on all-cash offers from investment groups. She was perfect. When she arrived the next day, she was exactly as her photo promised. Sharp, impeccably dressed, with a no-nonsense energy that filled the room. She walked through my house not like a guest, but like a general surveying a battlefield. Her eyes missed nothing. You built this yourself, Mr. Pendleton? She asked, running a hand over the smooth, jointed wood of a built-in bookshelf. Every last bit of it, I confirmed. She nodded slowly, a look of genuine appreciation on her face. You don't see craftsmanship like this anymore. Good bones. Solid foundation. This isn't just a house. It's a work of art. The developers are going to love this. She paused in the kitchen, tapping a polished granite countertop. What's your timeline? As fast as humanly possible, I said. I'm looking for a cash buyer. I don't want a bidding war or a long closing. I want it done. Carol looked at me, her gaze analytical. She saw a man on a mission, not a grieving widower. I have a few investment groups who buy properties like this for the land value. They pay cash, waive most contingencies, and can close in as little as 10 days. The offer will be firm, but it might be slightly below the absolute peak market value you'd get from a traditional buyer. Speed and certainty are more valuable to me than a few extra $1,000, I told her. She smiled, a quick professional flash of teeth. I like your style, Mr. Pendleton. Let's talk numbers. Given the location, the lot size, and the quality of the structure, even for a quick cash sale, I think we can ask for $900,000 and expect to get very close to it. The number hung in the air, a stunning validation of my life's work. Nearly $1 million. The sum that was supposed to fund my daughter's new life while I faded away in some coastal institution. The anger, cold and pure, flared inside me again, fueling my resolve. Carol was true to her word. Within 48 hours, she called. I have an offer, she announced, her voice crisp. An investment firm that specializes in luxury redevelopment. They love the property. The offer is $890,000. All cash. No inspection contingency. They can close in 10 business days, 10 days. It was perfect. My daughter's vacation was planned for 2 weeks from now. The timing was exquisite. I accept, I said, without a moment's hesitation. The next few days were a blur of methodical action. While the real estate machine ground forward, I began the process of dismantling my life. I rented a small, modern apartment in a new complex across town, a place with no memories and no ghosts. It was clean, anonymous, and perfect. I signed the lease and paid 3 months' rent in advance. Then I called a storage company and arranged for them to pack and move the things that mattered. Martha's armchair, the photos from the mantelpiece, my tools, my father's old watch, the walnut frame holding the picture of a young, hopeful couple standing on an empty plot of land. The rest, the furniture, the dishes, the accumulated clutter of a lifetime, could be left. It was part of the sale, a shell to be discarded by the new owners. It meant nothing to me now. The day of the closing, I sat in a sterile conference room with Carol and a title agent. The paperwork was a mountain, but I read every line. My mind, the mind of an engineer, was clear and focused. I signed my name over and over, each stroke of the pen a deliberate act of severance. When it was done, the title agent slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a confirmation of a wire transfer. A very large sum of money had just been deposited into a new bank account I had opened the day before, an account to which only I had the name and number. I stood up and shook Carol's hand. Thank you for your efficiency. It was my pleasure, Mr. Pendleton, she said, her professional mask softening for a moment. I hope you enjoy your next chapter. Oh, I will, I thought. I most certainly will. My final days in the house were strange. It was already no longer mine. It was a holding space, a stage waiting for the final act. The storage company had come and gone, leaving behind ghostly outlines in the dust where furniture used to be. The rooms echoed with emptiness. It felt clean, surgical. On the last day, before I left for good, I executed the final steps of my plan. The first was a locksmith, a quiet, efficient man who worked quickly, replacing the front and back door locks with new, high-security models. He handed me a single set of new keys, which I slipped into my pocket. They felt heavy, final. Next, I placed a small, discreet box on the bookshelf opposite the front door. It was a wireless security camera, one that streamed high-definition video and audio directly to my phone. I aimed it perfectly to capture the entryway, the living room, and the front door itself. I tested the connection. The image on my phone was crystal clear. Finally, I sat down at the empty kitchen counter with a single sheet of fine stationery and my best pen. I took my time, my handwriting firm and steady. The note was not long, but every word was chosen with care. Sarah and Mark, it began. If you're reading this, it means your key did not work. That is because this is no longer my house. As of 3 days ago, it was sold. The locks have been changed by the new owners. All of my personal belongings have been removed. The money from the sale has been moved to an account you will not find. I know about your plan. The vacation, Seaside Meadows, selling my home from under me while I was put away. I know you see me as a burden to be managed and my life's work as an asset to be liquidated for your convenience. I will not be your burden. I will not be your windfall. You wanted me out of the house. Congratulations, you have succeeded. All the years of sacrifice, the tuition, the wedding, the loans, the gifts, I gave them all freely out of love for a daughter I thought loved me in return. I see now that love was just another investment you were waiting to cash in. Your inheritance was spent on you long ago. This is all that is left. Do not try to contact me. My number will be changed. I have left instructions with my lawyer that any attempt to declare me incompetent will be met with the full force of the law, and the evidence of your conspiracy will be made public. I wish you the best in dealing with the financial consequences of your choices. You are on your own now. It's your turn. I did not sign it with Dad or love. I simply signed my full name. Arthur Pendleton. A formal declaration of independence. I placed the letter in an envelope, sealed it, and propped it up in the very center of the bare mantelpiece, the only object in the entire room. I took one last walk through the empty house, my footsteps echoing in the silence. There was no sadness, no regret, just a profound, quiet sense of release. I had built this house with love, and I had unbuilt my life within it with cold, hard necessity. I walked out the front door, locked it behind me with a new key, and dropped the key into a nearby storm drain. I never looked back. From the quiet comfort of my new apartment, I waited. I had everything I needed: a comfortable chair, a glass of fine single malt scotch, and my phone. The day they were scheduled to return from their own weekend trip, a little getaway to celebrate their impending good fortune, I opened the camera app. The image of my former living room, empty and silent, filled the screen. The waiting was the hardest part, a slow, simmering tension. I watched the sun shift across the empty floorboards. Then, late in the afternoon, a car pulled into the driveway. My daughter's SUV. The sound of car doors slamming came through the phone speaker, followed by the crunch of gravel. They appeared at the front door, laughing about something. Mark was juggling their suitcases, Sarah fumbling in her purse for the key she believed was hers. I leaned forward, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was it. I watched her slide the key into the lock. It went in, but it didn't turn. She jiggled it. Nothing. A frown creased her forehead. "That's weird," she said, her voice tinny through the speaker. "It stuck. Let me try," Mark said, setting the bags down with a thud. He took the key and tried to force it, grunting with effort. The lock held firm. His confident swagger began to evaporate, replaced by a brutish frustration. "What the hell? Did your dad break the lock? Why would he do that?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with anxiety. They tried the back door. Same result. Panic began to creep into their voices. They walked around the house, peering into windows, their faces pressed against the glass. "It's empty," Sarah cried out, her voice rising in disbelief. "Where's all the furniture? Dad's chair, it's gone." Mark's frustration boiled over into rage. "I knew we shouldn't have waited. We should have just moved him out last week." He stormed back to the front door and, after a moment's hesitation, kicked it. The wood splintered around the new lock, but it held. He kicked it again and again, his grunts of effort filling the air. Finally, with a loud crack, the door frame gave way and the door swung inward. They stumbled inside, looking around at the vast, empty space. The scale of the emptiness seemed to stun them into silence. Then Sarah's eyes landed on the single white envelope standing on the mantelpiece. She walked towards it slowly, as if approaching a snake. Her hands trembled as she picked it up and tore it open. I watched her face as she read. I could see the color drain from it, her expression shifting from confusion to shock, to utter, gut-wrenching horror. She held the letter out to Mark, unable to speak. He snatched it from her and read it, his eyes scanning the page with furious speed. When he finished, he didn't explode. He crumpled the paper in his fist, his whole body shaking. The audio from the camera picked up his voice, a low, venomous hiss. He sold it. The old bastard sold everything. No, Sarah whispered, shaking her head. No, he couldn't have. How? How? Mark's voice erupted into a full-blown roar. He owned it, you idiot. It was his. We have nothing. Do you understand me? We have nothing. He started pacing, a caged animal. The credit cards are maxed out. I took out a bridge loan against this sale. We're ruined. We are completely, utterly ruined. My dad wouldn't do this, she sobbed, sinking to the floor. He wouldn't. Your dad just did, he screamed, turning on her, his face contorted with fury. This is your fault. All your sentimental garbage. Let's be nice about it, Mark. Let's give him a vacation. Mark, we should have just gotten power of attorney. We should have had him declared incompetent when we had the chance. The venom in his voice was raw, unfiltered. The masks were off. I watched them tear into each other, their greed and entitlement curdling into mutual blame and hatred. Their beautiful future, built on a foundation of my betrayal, had crumbled to dust in a matter of minutes. I had seen enough. I closed the app. The screen went dark. I stood up and walked to my new window, which overlooked a small, peaceful park, not a driveway of broken dreams. The scotch in my glass caught the evening light, glowing like amber. I raised it in a silent toast. To you, Martha, I whispered. You were right. As always, my phone buzzed on the counter. A text message. It was from Sarah. I picked up the phone, looked at her name on the screen, and without reading a single word of what was surely a desperate, pleading message, I deleted it. Then I blocked her number. And his. The silence in my new apartment was different. It wasn't the heavy, grieving silence of the old house. It was a light, clean silence. The silence of a blank page. The silence of freedom. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like my own man again. The burden was lifted, but it was I who had lifted it.